Hey y'all, we are doing our April reading wrap up. I actually really liked, well, mostly everything I read. One of the books I had some slight issues with, but so the first book I read for April was The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. Guys, as per usual, I probably butcher so many of the authors' names. This was one of those books I picked out because it's gorgeous. I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I am a sucker for a pretty book cover. This book did not disappoint though. It definitely was weird. It is a gothic fairy tale story. Hey, editing Cassandra here. I am working on my monthly reading wrap up and I realized that I didn't explain who the husband is in The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. So real quick, this book's perspective is from the bridegroom or the husband that you never find out what his name is actually. And he is a scholar who does a lot of research on mythology, and that's kind of how he ends up meeting his wife. So there's a little background information. He meets this mysterious heiress and falls in love with her, marries her, but her one condition is that he can't ever ask her any questions about her past. So when his wife finds out that her estranged aunt is dying, they go back to her childhood home where he finds out that his wife's childhood best friend had disappeared. Nobody ever found out what happened to her, and there are all these secrets in this house. This book was a dual perspective, so it was told by the husband's point of view as well as the childhood friend Azur, who had disappeared. So it goes back and forth between him piecing together what had happened and Azur's point of view up into the point of her disappearing. You guys, this mystery had me sucked in from the very beginning. I had several theories of what potentially could have happened, and I was still surprised to find out the answers. I hate when books leave you guessing as to what could have happened. I need my answers, and you do get them at the end of this book, which I love. I will say there was a lot of times while reading this book where you're not really sure what's real or not real or what's actually happening versus in their imaginations, but so much of this author's writing was just gorgeous. It was a lot of like flowery words. In fairy tales, a kiss marks a threshold. Between the state of being cursed or cured lies a kiss. But not all kisses cure, some kill. Thresholds go both ways after all. If you love a little mystery, some mythology, and some fairy tale, I highly recommend this book. I think you will love it. The next thing I read was The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. I did do a reading vlog on this one because they actually came out with a mini series based off this book on Apple TV. You should go watch that video. But this book is about a woman named Hannah. She has recently married this gorgeous man, Owen, who happens to have a 16-year-old daughter. One day, Owen just disappears. I'm just sensing a theme between 3 of the books I read this month. Anyway, one day Owen vanishes, leaving Hannah this mysterious note, and all it says is protect her. Next, Hannah finds out that there is some big scandal with the shop, which is a company that her husband works for. And so her and Bailey, the 16-year-old daughter, go on this big adventure to figure out what happened and find out where Owen disappeared to. This was a super easy read if you just need something quick. It also was a great mystery, and it had quite the turn that I was not expecting. I didn't really mark much while reading this book, but there's just a really cute line at the end of it that made me really sad. The could have been boys still love you, Owen says. He isn't looking at me when he says it, his voice low. The way you say hello, the way you say goodbye. If you are looking for a fun, quick read, I highly recommend this one. The next thing I read was the last book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I liked this better than the 4th one, but I was not that thrilled with it. I actually felt like towards the end, it got a lot more exciting. Very Hunger Games-ish. This one is told from the dual perspectives. It would bounce back and forth between Nesta and and Cassian. And this book was all about Nesta's growth and kind of getting over all the trauma she's had throughout her life and building a really cool group of women who fight together. And there's also some very smutty stuff between her and Cassian. I felt like the other books are pretty low on the spice scale, and this one just like, I don't know. I'm sure the smut readers are like, this is nothing, but it was a little more than I would have preferred. This, of course, is a fantasy book. Gwen's finger slid into hers, squeezing tight. Nesta looked up to find her holding Emery's free hand as well. Gwen smiled again, her eyes bright. Our stories are worth telling. And the last book I read for April was The Last to Vanish. See, just about every book I read this month had to do with disappearances. Not sure how that happened. This one is by Megan Miranda. It is a mystery slash thriller book, and I was so hooked the whole time, you guys. It is about this girl named Abby who ends up moving to this small town to work for her aunt who owns this little inn in North Carolina. A lot of tourists are drawn to this area because there have been quite a few disappearances in that area that have been like over sensationalized. So everyone thinks there's this dark secret about this town, and it brings a lot of tourists in. Not to mention, it's also just a very outdoorsy, like you can go for a lot of beautiful hikes and horseback riding, zip lining, stuff like that. Very outdoorsy vacation activities. Abby, however, is surprised one night when this man, Trey West, checks into the hotel. And the weird thing about him is his brother had just recently gone missing in this area a couple months prior. So Trey shows up trying to figure out what happened to his brother and the mystery behind this town. This book is told from Abby's perspective, but it is split up into different parts based on all the people that disappeared in this town. Each part, I swear, had some shocking twist or turn at the end of it, so you're totally hooked the whole way through the book. This was one where I even had one of those scream out loud moments where you are like yelling at your book. There was quite the surprise I was just not expecting. I highly recommend it. The characters were more or less pretty likable, and there's just so much action that happens in such a short period of time. This is another really easy read. If you're into true crime at all, this might also be the book for you. I really enjoyed this one. Highly recommend. It's easy to believe if you want. It's just as easy to disbelieve. But whichever person you are, believer or disbeliever, Cutter's Pass welcomes you equally. The truth is, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you have read any of these books, I am of course dying to know what you think about them. If you haven't, hopefully I've inspired you to pick one of them up. Like I said, I highly suggest all of these books. Court of Silver Flames was not my favorite, but the series itself is so good. You can follow me on Instagram to keep up with what I'm up to and what I'm reading. Like this video and subscribe, and I hope to see you next Wednesday.